Greetings, humans, Daleks, Time Lords, and Vord. You are listening to Exterminating Doctor Who.
This is the show that takes Doctor Who's most talked about episodes to debate if they're as good or as bad as their reputations.
With your hosts, Aidan Gula.
And me, George Ellis.
And in today's episode, we are talking about the Keys of Marinus, joined by Pete Adamson.
Hello.
Hello. Guest number 2.
Yeah.
We've done a podcast together before about Doctor Who.
We have, yeah.
So
That's about this time last year, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, I think it's probably a year ago-ish. Yeah. And then, so I thought, we'll get you back. I'll do a sequel to that, get you on here. And of course, you know, do you say you prefer Classic Who over New Who? Or are you just a really big fan of it?
Yeah, I think I prefer Classic Who because I know a lot more about it. I've been into Classic Who for longer than New Who, and it's one of those weird things. It's when you grow up with it and you've got all the videotapes and stuff, and you know the cast lists and everything, and then when New Who comes along, it's a different kind of ball game. Obviously I wasn't that old when New Who came out, but I did know a lot about Classic Who beforehand, so feels more like my era growing up in a weird way.
Yeah.
But having said that, my favorite individual series of Doctor Who is the Christopher Eccleston one. So a bit better.
Fair enough, yeah. So I thought, because I know you like Classic Who, I thought we'll get you on. We'll have you talking about a Classic Who episode, because you'd said to us before that you wanted us to talk about more Classic Who on the podcast. So I thought it seems right to get him on.
More Classic Who. Some Classic Who.
Yeah, because the only time is when we did the TV movie, and is that even really Classic
Not
Who?
really.
Like, it's kind of somewhere in the middle, isn't it? So, yeah. So you've chosen the Keys of Marinus for us.
Yes.
But before we begin on that, I shall ask you we did this with our last guest and the guest before that,
And with us.
Yeah. So I shall ask you your Doctor Who profile, Pete. How did you get into Doctor Who? Who's your favorite Doctor? All that.
Why is it David Tennant? It's all those questions.
And also because you've worked on, was it the Faceless Ones DVD? Didn't you do a special feature on that?
Oh God, yeah.
So you can tell us a bit
my claim
about
to fame.
Yeah, well, of course, you've got to tell us a bit about that, haven't you? That's a great thing to work on.
Yeah. So I got into Doctor Who pretty much as soon as I was born because my dad was a big fan. He went to Longley and all the old conventions, and he got into it kind of late Tom Baker, really, Peter Davison, because he wasn't allowed to watch it when he was a really young kid. So I feel like when he was that age, I think he was kind of 15, 16, he sort of rebelled and got into it. And he went also to all the conventions, met all the stars, Michael Craze, all the ones that are now dead that we wish you could meet. He's Patrick Troughton. Yeah. He met all of them. He did a sponsored walk, I think, with Patrick Troughton, and he's got all these memories of meeting all of them. Anyway,
that's amazing.
And he was on a plane next to Fraser Hines and stuff, and loads of cool memories. And then when I was born, he pretty much just got me into it straight away. Like the other day, I was looking at my baby book. Do people still have baby books? I don't know. And it said 2nd of December 2000.
What do you mean by baby book?
Well, it's just one of those books, isn't it, where you put like bits of your baby's hair in it and.
That sounds a bit psychotic.
Yeah. When you said baby book, I thought like photo album. Is this?
Yeah. Well, it's like a photo. Yeah, like a photo. Anyway,
and in there, bits of baby.
In there,
but with DNA in case you ever need to make a clone.
Yeah. In case something happens to the original, you can clone now.
Yeah. Smart.
But in there it said 2nd of December 2000. I watched the Ribos operation, so that's the earliest like documented time I watched Doctor Who when I was, I don't know how many, 8 months old or something. You do the maths.
Yes.
And so I got into it. My earliest memory of life, not even Doctor Who as a whole of life, is like the more than 30 years in the TARDIS documentary. I used to have that on an old VHS. And like Planet of the Daleks and all those old stories. And then when it came back in 2005, it was just a great family event. We all used to sit down and we got to start getting the figures and stuff. And it was good. It was a great time to be a fan. I'm sure I'm assuming you guys got into it with the new series, so you probably have similar experiences in that respect.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can respect like why you prefer Classic Who, because obviously my jumping on was New Who, so I have a fondness for that over Classic Who because it's what I grew up with. So I can understand why. Like, I don't think Classic Who is as good as New Who, but that's more just because
you've grown up.
I've grown up with New Who.
Yeah. You want one thing, then you go to the other thing. It's still kind of there, but it's slightly different.
Exactly.
So I jumped on with Christopher Eccleston and then went backwards to then do the classics. Whereas in your case, it's like classics. Oh, who's this new guy, Christopher Eccleston? So it's a really nice kind of different Viewed.
Well, I was lucky enough that when it came back, obviously I was only like 4 or 5, so I didn't have years and years and years of Classic Who watching, but I had kind of a little bit that it kind of did stick with me, and it has, I do on the whole prefer Classic Who, but it's one of those, isn't it? I like all of Doctor Who really. Mainly with the new series, it's mainly the Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant years. I'm not so much of a big fan of the Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, Jodie Whittaker stuff, but yeah. I mean, to be fair, I still haven't watched that new. What was that New Year's Day one? Revolution
of the
You don't
Daleks.
need to. It's okay. Don't
Get
worry.
honest advice. Don't bother.
Well, because I watched After the Timeless Children, I was so angry. I thought I'm not watching this anymore. I'm sure at some point I will sit down and watch it, but I've still not.
Well, I did the same thing, because obviously when we did the podcast that we did together before, I think we had a whole 20-minute section of just moaning about the Timeless Child.
With 20 minutes of you moaning about the Timeless Child.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. And then we did another episode on that, because obviously I've got a lot to say about it. But then I was the same good. I'm never going to watch this again. But then I thought, you know what, for the podcast, let's watch Revolution of the Daleks. And then in our episode, I think me and George were going for like the first 20 minutes. We were like, you know what, this is actually pretty good. And then the last like half an hour, we're like, can we just end it now? This is so bad. But yeah. Who's your favorite Doctor then? Do you have one, or
I've got Google open?
Or are you torn?
I've got a script from George here. It says David Tennant. Is that how I pronounce it?
That's the one.
Yeah.
as a red dot appears on your forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
well, now
it's
that you've said that, we'll cut.
Christopher Eccleston.
Oh, that's
really?
cool then. That's surprising. That is.
Yeah.
I was
I know
expecting
he's
a
only-
classic Doctor.
It's weird because he was only there for a year, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's often the one that you, not even necessarily your first Doctor, but the one you kind of latch onto is the one that gets you. I don't know.
Well, that's how I was with David Tennant for a long time, and then like when Peter Capaldi was the Doctor, I was going, "You're really good, but I can't ever let go of David Tennant, can I?" And then I think it was like the moment Peter Capaldi regenerated, I was going, "Oh, he's done it. He's my favorite Doctor now." And it was like that was so you do kind of like, because people always say like my Doctor. I never really know what my Doctor means. Like, is it your first? Is it your favorite? Is the one that you first got?
It means the most. Yeah.
It's
Well,
probably a mix
interesting
of everything.
because Christopher Eccleston hasn't always been my favorite Doctor. He became my favorite Doctor probably around the time of the 50th, when I realized he wasn't coming back, and I was like, oh, I want my Doctor back. But before that, it was like Peter Davison and John Pertwee when I was a really small kid. I mean, I remember when I was like 5 years old, I was going, oh, Peter Davison's my favorite Doctor because he's 5 and I'm 5 years old. Like it was that level of. But
until you get to 6, you go, wait, what can I say now?
Yeah. But talking to Christopher Eccleston, I'll just, if anybody listens to these and doesn't have the visuals, then screw you. But has anybody got this?
I haven't got. I've heard.
Is that the vinyl?
I don't own it.
Yeah.
It costs too much money for me to own the vinyl. I just give me the download. But
yeah.
No, that's all. So how did the special feature come about then? That's the
Special
one thing
feature, right?
you
So it's
mentioned
Yeah,
there.
we need to know your connections. It's important.
Yeah, so let me
It's
just
a
make
bit
some
of a-
notes.
a bit of a long-winded thing, really, because I met Toby Haydock at a convention when I was like 16, 17. And he's a really nice guy, really funny. I mean, if you watch the documentary, you know what he's like. You know,
Yeah.
you know what he comes across as, and he's like that in real life. And he lives in Manchester, so he's local. But I met him at a convention, and after the convention, he came up on my suggestion on Facebook, so I added him. And then in first year of uni, I don't know if you guys would have done this because obviously George, your film production, and Aidan,
I was
you
at the
didn't
time,
do first, yeah. But in first year, you do a kind of My Love Of documentary. So I was like, right, well, who can I interview that? Because they said as well, it can't be someone that you're too close to, I think, and it can't be your nan, and it can't be. So there's a load of rules you had to go through.
I love
it's
my
like-
grandma because she makes really nice sandwiches for me on Sundays.
But what if your
Yeah.
nan was like somebody really famous? Like,
Well, I don't know. To be fair, I don't know if that was a rule because in the end, I did end up interviewing my granddad, so I don't know if that was a rule, but there was some sort of hoop I had to go through. So I was like,
Yeah.
well, I'll do Toby Haydock and I'll talk about his love of Doctor Who and his documentary making and all that. And then literally about a week before we were going to film it, he was like, oh, I've got, I don't know if he said family issues, or he had something going on, he had work or he had something going on. So he had to cancel. So I interviewed my granddad in the end, and it was like, oh, it's gutting because it would have been such a good little piece. He invited us round to his house and would have done a nice little documentary. It was only like a 3-minute one, but it would have been cool.
and a nice thing to have presented, wouldn't it? And just to do, really.
Eat that. Look at me. I can actually get someone.
Well, this is it. And then, but I had done like most of the production folder already for it. with Toby Haydock, which is again a bit of a ball ache because I had to go back and redo it all with my
everything's
granddad.
set up.
But I was like, well, there's no point of putting this to waste. We'll do it at some point. So me and my mate Dan did a documentary with Toby Haydock in summer 2019, I think, and it was a much bigger one. It was like a half-an-hour documentary where we went to his house. He's got a TARDIS lift in his house because his partner Cheryl is his wheelchair user.
Does it make the noise?
No. Because it's also not the right dimensions, but we're enough with that.
I feel like if you had like a TARDIS lift, you'd think, right, it's got to make the noise as it goes up. But after a while, you'd be so irritated with it, you'd have to remove it.
Imagine you're trying to go up after.
Oh, for God's sake!
You've stayed up late to watch an episode of Doctor Who, and you need to go to bed, but you're knackered. That would make me want to just die. Like just hearing that as you're going up the stairs, you're like, oh, come on, I want to get to bed.
You wake everyone else up in the house.
Yeah.
But so we did a documentary at his house, and we also did a few other things. We interviewed, do you know Chris Chapman that does the documentaries for the Blu-rays, and we did that at a convention.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, we did. So we did that, and we went to his comedy show, and we did like a "This Is Your Life" thing where we had a load of his old comedian friends from 20 years ago that he's not met in 20 years. And we surprised him with them, and it was quite a nice documentary. We never actually finished it at the end because COVID got in the way and stuff. And since COVID, I've lost 4 stone, so I don't know if we're gonna. If we start filming again after COVID, it's gonna be weird if there's a weird jump and I suddenly lost 4 stone in between shots. But we were at some point we do want to finish that documentary. But anyway, so he'd seen us working on that, and I think he was either really impressed or really desperate because he needed a crew for a documentary, and I think they have such minuscule budgets. I think it was something like I don't know if I can actually say what the budget was. Maybe that's not my place to say, but it was very small budget.
You can say it and I'll cut it out.
I'll tell you after the show.
Okay.
So he had a really small budget, and he was like, you know what, you've got cameras, you've got equipment,
And you're cheap.
you're in Manchester. You know, do you want to give it a chance? And it's one of those. It never really went anywhere. We never got a second one. But it was such a great experience. We went round to the illustrator Martin's house and did an interview with him, and the director Anne-Marie was there, and it was really nice, and it was a good experience. It was just sadly never went anywhere, but
it's cool.
It's
It's just cool to be able to have a Doctor Who DVD, stick in a special feature, then see your name in the credits.
Well, it's like a dream come true, like, because I've, this is the reason I did TV and radio in the first place, was because I wanted to work on Doctor Who. So I think that if I never get Doctor Who, then this is as close as I can get, and it's good. And I've got this little guy here as well. He was one of the animated faceless ones.
Ooh.
Yes.
Couldn't quite see his face. Way.
Oh, that took me a moment. That did. That is.
I like he gave me a courtesy giggle.
Shame
though.
on you.
It was like a.
And then it was a polite laugh, and I was going, I don't really get this. And then my brain clocked. Oh, I can't see his face, faceless ones, and I thought, oh, shut up, man.
That's a classic.
But the real activity that we are all here for is to
Yes.
talk the Keys of Marinus.
Mhm. There were a fair amount of
interesting-
keys.
Yeah, quite a few keys.
I was just saying there's a fair amount of keys, some of which Aidan forgot were in it.
Well, my attention span's really short, and sometimes I get distracted, and then I was like, "Where's that key come from?" But anyway, no, it's an interesting pick because I thought, because George hasn't seen Classic Who. Well, you have now. But you haven't seen.
Should I say why I've picked it? Should I?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, because we were going to do Reign of Terror, weren't we? I think.
Yeah,
and that wasn't on BritBox.
Wasn't on BritBox.
And I
wasn't
love
going
Reign.
to my VHS store and just fishing that out. Have you got this episode of Doctor Who? We don't. What are you doing here? Get out. Okay.
Well, I've been doing something with my brother where we watch one episode a day because he's never watched Classic Who. He's a bit like you, George. He's
Poor guy.
an idiot. And
Hey! Wait.
so we've been watching one episode a day. So I worked out that if you start watching one episode of Doctor Who a day from July the 4th onwards, you'll finish at the 60th. It's just 2.5 years, but if you do one a day,
Jesus.
So somehow, I don't know how, he agreed. I don't know if it was because I tied him up or if it's because I don't know if that was the reason. He agreed to do it with me, and so it's August the 20th when we're recording this. So we're up to Dalek Invasion of Earth Part 3 today. In fact, after do this podcast, I'll probably run through and say we're watching it. But it's got to the point now where he's genuinely enjoying it, and where he'll come through and say, "Oh, can we watch the Sensorites? Can we watch the Aztecs?" So it's quite nice that he is enjoying it. But we've been doing reviews every day of every episode as well. Little write-ups of each episode, individual episodes.
That's so much work. Are you going to do that for 2 years?
I don't know. To be fair, at the moment, I'm about 12 days behind on the written reviews.
You need to catch up there. Eventually, you're going to be like 24 days behind. And
well,
you're going to be like...
My plan is, I think I'll just like kick off again with Dalek Invasion of Earth, and then at some point I'll go back to Planet of Giants and Reign of Terror and do the reviews of them. But anyway, so he was a bit unsure at first. He was like, I don't really want to do this. It's a part-time job doing this for 2 years. But I was like, come on, it'll be fun. Like, it's a good like brother bonding time. You know what I mean? Like, so he agreed. And to be fair, after, I don't know which story it would have been, but like I say, he really got into it, probably more than me, to be fair. Like, he was just really keen to watch them and get into them. But at the end of season 1, we did a little podcast. I haven't released it yet, but it was about 2.5 hour podcast. Not as good as your guys' podcast, obviously, but you know. And we reviewed every story in season 1. And I worked out the averages of the stories, because we've been rating every episode out of 10 as well. So I worked out the averages and everything. And we both came to the conclusion that Marco Polo is kind of the best story, really. It is. But the most fun one, and the one that would help new people get into the show, was Keys of Marinus, because that's the one that he enjoyed the most. And it's the one that that I've loved since I think I got it on DVD when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And it's one of the first Hartnell ones I ever saw. And I loved it when I first watched it. And so I thought it'd be interesting to see what George would think of it, because like I say, you're in a similar boat to my brother in that you've not watched very much. He's watched the odd bit. He's watched like City of Death and 5 Doctors, but he hasn't really watched any Classic Who. And that was the story that really he enjoyed. So I thought it'd be interesting to see what you think of it, George, and whether you agree it's a good kind of jumping
because I thought it when because we like you said we were going to do Reign of Terror. Then when I saw that wasn't available, I thought, oh, what's kind of like a good option for a big, because you still want to do a Hartnell one. So I was thinking like you want a kind of a big notable one. I thought that'd be quite nice for an introduction. So I thought obviously you want something with Daleks would be a good introduction. But as you pointed out, Pete, the Daleks as a story is 7 parts, and one of them is them jumping over a cave.
Well, that's the conclusion that we came to, because I've watched the Daleks so many times, like as a kid and growing up and everything, and I've always quite liked it. But doing one episode a day with my brother, and it's interesting when you watch with someone else, because you kind of seen their reaction, you see what they take out of it as well. But his reaction was just like, 25 minutes of watching 6 owls jump over a cave. Not the best story. Probably the most iconic of season 1. It is an iconic story, the Daleks, but I don't think it's the best story.
No, because it is something where I thought that feels like a natural jumping on point, but it is really
jumping
slow.
On point.
And it actually took me a while to kind of appreciate the Daleks, because the first time I saw it, I thought, I mean, this is good because it's first appearance of the Daleks, but can we hurry this up, please? And it wasn't until I then saw the Peter Cushing film, which is it condensed into an hour and a half, where I thought, right, I get the story now. So
in a lot of ways, the film's better in a lot of ways.
So then it took me a while to appreciate it. So when you said the Keys of Marinus, that seems like a bit of a random one.
I also wanted to do one that wasn't like an absolute fan favorite. I wanted to do something that's a bit more underrated, because I love the Keys of Marinus. It's one of my I think when I was a kid, perhaps it was even my favorite classic or one of my favorite classics. And it doesn't get talked about that much. I know people have started talking about it a bit more now because the figures are coming out, aren't they? The Vought figures are coming out at some point, but I feel like it deserves a reappraisal. And it's also, it's very easy to pick Dalek Invasion of Earth or 10th Planet or whatever, but I don't know, I feel like something a bit more out there.
Because I remember thinking it's a bit of an odd choice to choose, but then as I was watching it, first 2 parts especially, I was going, this is a bloody good choice, because I was really I hadn't seen it before. That was what was interesting, because I was going to watch it, like you said, because the figures are coming out. I thought I should probably watch this to appreciate it. Like, I've just had to watch the Sensorise as well, because I hadn't seen that one before either. But that one wasn't as good, I can say that for sure.
The good thing about Keys of Marinus is that it's constantly moving, and it feels quite pacey. That
was going to be like one of the first things I was going to say about it, is it really for somebody with a really bad attention span, it really kept my attention, and it was really easy to follow. I
agree. One of the strongest parts of watching it was the fact that it was somewhat of an anthology series, kind of going to different locations, all one big overarching story, but Doctor Who excels at these weird places with these new characters and just kind of this mystery. And with Keys of Marinus, you're just kind of throwing 6 mysteries into one, and it doesn't feel bloated for the most part, but I do think
at the end I do
suffer
think
a little
drags.
bit because of it. Yes, at the end.
Me and my brother both said that the stuff that kind of really lets it down is the courtroom stuff at the end. And even if that had been like 1 episode, it probably would have been okay. But it's like 1.5 or nearly 2 episodes, and it's kind of like, it's not great.
Yeah, that I found that got tedious. But the first and then the middle 2 parts I really enjoyed, but it was like I want to see the Doctor. But I did the last 2 parts for me is where it slightly got let down. But I was still enjoying it, but it was a bit like move it along. Do you know what I mean? But I'm gonna hop to George here, and because this is your first introduction to proper classic Who. Because, like I said, does Paul McGann really count? But
this is the first story.
Yes, ever.
First ever.
Yeah, apart from Paul McGann, but as we said, that doesn't really count.
If you hate this, then the pressure on me is
bad. That's why I thought something notable.
We'll see.
When you said the Daleks is boring, I thought it is. So I just want to get a general feel for what you thought of it, George, because you've been kind of very much like, I'll tell you on the podcast.
Yeah,
you've not revealed to me how you feel about it. So
right. So let's just start off by saying I was dreading watching this because like, oh, for God's sake, it's 6 parts and it's all
black and white.
Long.
And it's
hey, we'll do Daleks Master Plan next time if you want.
Dated.
Isn't that like 11 or 12 parts? Or
12,
something?
yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's no, but so I was somewhat dreading it. I was excited to see Hartnell and kind of what Classic Who was, but I was dreading having to watch it, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
But I will say I kind of enjoyed it. Like it is dated in places, definitely, where most places, like the sets are quite clearly just nothing. And
polystyrene.
And there's the special effects consist of models, which I always love, but the models are adorable and terrible, especially when the TARDIS first appears. That is incredible.
Yeah,
that's so cute. Just the little.
We've said this before that when we watch the
TARDIS.
episode, when we watch the episodes, we will send each other like live reaction clips as we're watching it. And when I was watching it and I saw the TARDIS appear, I went, I bet George sends me a video of that. And then literally, like, I don't know, an hour later, you'll go, look at the little teeny TARDIS. And I was like, I knew it. I knew he'd send me a clip of that bit.
But
it's also the first time you see the TARDIS materialize ever, isn't it?
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But although it's like it is kind of adorable seeing a teeny TARDIS and it's clearly a model, it's still endearing towards what the show is because it's all of the time, really.
It's got the charm of it, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And charm is a big thing with these episodes. And I'd say I found them, I'd say they did, as we've said, get a bit tougher to watch as they went on because it was like you're kind of losing me in the last 2 parts here because it's a bit tedious, but I still found it all very cozy and quite nice to just watch and just kind of relax with. It's not really something I feel like I need to be I'm not as enthralled as I am with an episode of New Who, like Midnight, for example, which we spoke about. Like that, I'm like, I'm gripped what's happening here. But with Keys of Marinus, I was watching and I was thinking, I'm interested in this mystery, but I'm not stressing about it. And if you get what I mean.
Yeah. But I thought that was kind of nice because I thought it was like just like I think cozy is a real nice word to use about it because it is like I was watching it going like I'm not going, will they get the keys? Won't they get the keys? I'm just like, no, I wonder if they'll get the keys. Like, it's just kind of really nice to watch. And I've always found that about Hartnell. Like, I mean, this is probably why people fell in love with him as a Doctor back in the day, because he's kind of like everybody wants him to be their granddad kind of thing. And it's kind of just like really nice to watch him just like, let's go look for some keys. And you've got your granddaughter with you. And it's all very pleasant, isn't it? And I just thought it was just really fun is my word to describe it.
I'd say
just really fun to watch.
It's like a rainy day Doctor. It's like comfort Doctor, because like, you know, there is stories in season 1 that I do think are better. I think Marco Polo's better. I think Reign of Terror's better. But in terms of like just sitting down and just relaxing, I think Keys of Marinus is the one, because you don't have to put as much brain power into them. And like, I don't know. I think it's just it's very easy to watch.
It is quite endearing, this, and all in all, I enjoyed it. I did, but I won't be watching more anytime soon.
I failed.
I've got a few episodes that I want.
Yes, and I'm not dreading it, but what I mean by that is it's not kind of gone. I need to watch all of this. Like, I enjoyed it, and I can understand why people really like it, but it hasn't thrown me in yet. And I think that's probably more not down to the episode choice, but just because I've just got to watch more and get used to the characters.
Because there's so much of it as well,
Yes.
and it's because it's quite old. I can understand that from that perspective as well. Like, I don't have a problem in black and white, and I don't think you do either. But I think sometimes when things are quite old, I do sometimes struggle with them because they aren't made with the same pacing that we know now.
Yeah, black and white doesn't really stop me. Like, for a moment, I'm like, this is black and white, but eventually your brain just gets used to it, and then you remember it as color. Like, I love the Marx Brothers, and I used to watch loads of their films, and I'm like, it doesn't phase me. And when I think back to the Marx Brothers, I actually think back in color in a weird way. Like, I know what the color was, but it's just but I am going to be watching more episodes of Classic Who, but not by choice because Aidan's got me to. But that is,
I'm forcing you to. But
but yeah, it's just I've just got to get used to Classic Who as a concept and get used to the characters and that kind of thing for me to really commit myself to watching it, because I enjoyed this, and this hasn't put me off it, but it hasn't gone like, this is amazing, I have to watch it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Do you watch it all in one go though, George?
Yes.
Well, I think maybe that's potentially the issue, because I did a thing.
I was not splitting. I was not. No way am I doing like 2 parts and then another 2 parts and then I think I preferred. Although you're probably going to say yes, I would have maybe enjoyed the pacing more by splitting up, but it was one big story, so I think I kind of enjoyed just watching the whole thing as one big.
Yeah, but the other thing as well is, like, you've got to remember this would have been like 6 weeks of viewing back in the day, so it's like. It's kind of interesting, like, watching it all in one go, because I did a thing when I first started uni where I got a few people to watch like 1 episode from each Doctor, and we chose the Aztecs as the first Doctor. But having to watch like 4 parts in one go, I think it's a lot. So having to do 6 in one go is, for me personally, I don't think I'd want to do it.
Yeah, no, that's
I split it into 3 sittings, and I did 2 parts at a time. But I think that was quite nice, actually, because I've been watching the Tom Baker era from start to finish recently, which I've seen most of before, but there were gaps that I wanted to fill in. Watching them in like a big go, I can find with some stories that you'll kind of blur into one. Like, I'm on series 17 at the moment, and like the last 3 stories that I watched, I can't separate them. So watching this in 3 sittings was nice, because now I can talk to you about specific parts, and I feel like I can't do that with quite a few other Classic Who's, whereas actually I quite like that you can. Like, part 2 and 3 have their own, 3 and 4 have their own identity. 4, 5 and 6 have their own identity. All these things. And I think that's really something that's really nice about this. Like, it's kind of like the Key to Time series, but instead of across 5 or 6, how many stories there are, it's in 6 parts, and that's kind of gets through it much quicker. And it's just nice just to have a kind of a simple treasure hunt basically to follow. We've got to get keys. Why? We don't really know. We'll get them. Will they actually achieve anything in the end? Not really, but it's just fun to look for them while we are. And I found it. Yeah.
Well, my brother said something interesting after we'd finished watching it, because he said, couldn't they have just gone to the first key, broken the first key, and buggered off back home? Because, I mean, really, they needed all keys for the thing to work, didn't they? The Vord.
Yes.
So if they just broken one, it wouldn't have worked anyway. I don't know.
Well,
but then they didn't know the Vord had taken over, though, did they? So I don't think. I see. As soon as they kind of go off on their adventure, there's no way of stopping it. But I thought the same thing when they got the fake key. I thought, well, you could have just gone back after this and gone, hey, I'll have that. Oh, whatever, and then gone home. Like, it could have been over much quicker. But,
I can understand why, like, they stuck with doing it, because it's what they said they were going to do, and without doing that, they wouldn't get the TARDIS, like that kind of thing. But I think the main crux for me is the machine is all about controlling free will in a sense. And then at the end, the Doctor says how it's basically bad. And like, I forget the exact line, but I remember him mentioning something at the very end, how free will is inherently a good thing, and the machine is kind of, I won't have a machine dictate something or something. What does he say? It's something about justice. It can dictate kind of the machine, an AI can make rules, but it cannot choose between right and wrong. He says something like that.
Yeah.
So basically he says it's not a great thing, the machine, because it kind of takes away free will. And I thought that at the get-go. So I'm thinking, how is this good, them helping this guy basically enslave the entire planet? Although they're eradicating crime, they're doing that by controlling people's brains, which I think's not great.
Questionable.
Yes. So it's like, why are they even embarking on this mission? I know they have to for the TARDIS, but from the Doctor I know, which is Nuhu, he'd find a way around that.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I just found that quite interesting. Still enjoyed it.
You could probably said he probably would have made an excuse somehow at the end anyway. You could, if you really wanted to fill in some theory, you could say maybe this doctor would have found a way to destroy the machine anyway. It just so happened the Void took over and they decided to blow it up themselves. So you could say that, I guess, if you needed it to sit with you more comfortably. But I was the same at the start, thinking like, what? Who gives you the right to decide what people think, man in cloak?
The bit I didn't understand, to be honest, though, was because he says, Albertan at the start says, doesn't he, that there's a force field around the TARDIS. And he's like, when you get back here, when you've got all the keys, I'll release the force field. Right. But then he dies straight away, like as soon as the Doctor and everyone's left. So how did they get the force
disabled
field?
the force field? Yeah.
He might have had like a dead man switch or something, but also he says he would have let them go, but part of me thinks he would have just enslaved them as well before they could leave. Maybe. I don't trust him. I feel like this I still enjoyed it. It's very interesting. It's maybe I shouldn't be thinking so critically about a classic Who story.
That's what I thought, because that's when I said like this doesn't really make any sense. Like when it at the end when it just gets blown up and those past 6 episodes I just watched were basically a waste of time. It's kind of like, just don't stress about it. It was just fun adventure viewing. And I'm sure back in 1964, people were like going, oh, where will they go next week? I'm sure it was very fun. I doubt anybody at the end of it, when it was originally on, was going, no, let's consider the philosophy behind this. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you just have to do that with Classic Who a bit sometimes.
It's like with new things, with New Who, if they do this kind of thing, I'll rip it to shreds. But with Classic Who, I'm like, I'll let it go.
Yeah, it's just like, ah, that's what you were doing.
It's just because of the time, really. Like it's a different way of doing TV and filmmaking. It's all different. The scripts are different. The acting's different. I'm just going to stand here for 5 minutes and then say my line because we do one take. No, Susan, don't get in the water. After I stood there for 30 seconds, we're just staring at her. Oh my God.
Yeah, you like that bit.
I love that bit. But I still enjoyed it. Like that didn't take away from it. The acting, I'd say from the main cast, was actually really quite strong. Susan screams a lot, but still she's a really nice addition. And the one take thing does mean sometimes Hartnell is saying a completely wrong line and just powers through, but he still felt like the Doctor and he's acting it brilliantly. A moment which really made me feel like he was the Doctor was when he first lands on the beach and you can see the excitement and the fascination with the glass on the beach, and that's what I've seen from the Doctor in New Who, and it's really nice seeing this kind of, for me, proto-Doctor, kind of before he's had all the trauma of the Time War and all that kind of thing. You see the personality of the Doctor now is still derivative of what Hartnell was, and it's quite fascinating seeing that, really. And it's
but he has had like hundreds of lives before this. You've got to remember as well. Like he's had all the.
No, for a second there, I was like, what? But then no.
When I was, I think partway through part 2 or something, I remember thinking, oh, I love the first Doctor. And then my brain just went, but he's not the first Doctor, is he? And another part of my brain went, yes, he is, and just silenced the other part. I don't let that damage my Classic Who.
But he's the first Doctor. Well, he is you can't, like, yes, you can, even with the Timeless Child wasn't a thing until now. So if you're watching this, you've got to watch it as if you're watching it at the time without the new context. So you can throw Timeless Child away, which I would do anyway, because it's terrible.
Yes.
Dumb.
But I love how, like you're saying, like the thing with the fascination on the beach, and also even in as much as I didn't enjoy part 5. Well, I did enjoy it, but it was boring. The bit when he's explaining to Barbara how, oh, well, that might even be part 6. Who knows? They both blurred into one. The bit when he's explaining to Barbara how that crime was done, he kind of
throws her on the floor. Yeah.
throws her on the floor. But then when he's explaining things, I kind of like that there because he looked really chuffed with himself. Like he'd worked this thing out, and he was like, "Yeah, I've worked this out." I was telling people, and I really like that there because I just love how, like, I mean, because I'm gonna expose you here, George. This is so early in Doctor Who that this is obviously before Time Lords were even named, before Gallifrey was even named, before there was a sonic screwdriver, before Cybermen, before the Master, all these big things that we know. And as George was watching it, it did occur to me that I thought, does he know who these companions are? And then you did message me going, why is Susan keeps shouting grandfather every 2 minutes? And I went, because you know the Doctor is her granddad, right? And you were like, So I'm going to expose you there.
That feels like something that should have been brought up later on. Like that seems like a big thing. But you're going to say something.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Adventure in Space and Time?
No, but I am going to. Aidan
Yeah.
keeps shouting that, singing his praises from the rooftops, and I will watch it. But I think I need to watch a bit of Classic Who to get a bit of context for that. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit like, this is nice.
Well, that might give you the context for Classic Who if you watch that first.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But the thing with Susan was, it's the Doctor's granddaughter, and I was like, no, this can't be, because I assumed they would have at least brought her back or mentioned her in New Who at least once, or to the point where, or at least to the point where I'd understand who the hell Susan is. But instead, I'm watching this and I'm like, is she just insane, or is this a cover story, or what's going on here? And then Aidan's like, no, she is the granddaughter. I'm like, what? Because all I know of is about the Doctor's family is that most of them are, if not all of them, are dead apart from Jenny. And now I know Susan's around, and it's like, hold on, where's this come from? Who's an actual Time Lord as well? And come on, bring her back. I want Susan back.
There was that Capaldi episode, there wasn't there, where there was a picture of her on his desk.
Yeah, but that wouldn't have meant anything to me. I was like, that's companion. That's all I saw when I saw that. But now I know it's the granddaughter. It's quite an important thing, I think, that is a shame has been forgotten to time.
Like you said, like in New Who, they will mention, I've had a family, and you kind of just go, it's just a reference. But I can't think of a single time in New Who where Susan's been named. Like you might have said, I've had a family. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he's always got, I've had a family. I think
he's mentioned that he's been a grandfather at some point.
Yeah.
I always assumed that was probably someone
a generic statement. Yeah. Like I can't think of a single time when Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, Capaldi, anybody's said Susan. I can't ever be mentioned. So I can understand without context to hop onto this, and then this girl screaming grandfather, like, is that grandfather? Who are you? Like, I've never heard of you. I can understand the confusion.
I think it's insane that she's never come back. Well, I know she came back in 5 Doctors. I mean, like new series. She's never come back. Same
with about her being a
William
Time
Russell.
Lord. Yeah, no, but the thing about her being a Time Lord is what they can do is they can regenerate her, can't they? If they need to, but obviously the actor for Susan
still alive.
Is still alive, so they can kind of bring her back there. But if you really want to commit bringing back the character fully, you could have her, as me and Aidan kind of half discussed yesterday, you could have her come back after having been adventuring for a while. Maybe she's on a 3rd or 4th regeneration. Yeah. And she's kind of met up with Jenny, maybe, because Jenny's been doing adventures, and then you have both of them show up because Jenny's kind of like half Time Lord as well. So you could have them both show up and just kind of do like a family reunion kind of thing. And I think that
and Jenny's like
nice.
her auntie as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be really, really nice to see that. And I think that it'd give the Classic Who a bit more credence as well, because it would be a less of a throwback and more of a direct connection, other than just kind of the normal stuff. Like obviously the direct connection is the Doctor and like Gallifrey and that kind of thing, and they're like the bad guys, but a direct, this is only from Classic Who thing. Do you get what I'm meaning? I think that'd be really nice to see.
It is something I really don't know why they've never brought it back.
It must be like BBC management or something that have said no to it, because I don't know how else, because surely Russell or Stephen or someone would have.
Well, maybe not, because that was early on and they maybe didn't want to have that connection.
Yeah.
Yet they wanted to kind of set themselves up as their own thing before bringing someone
Like even
over,
if you
maybe.
think, I think even if you think about something like the end of time, for example, in the scene where you got the woman who's supposed to be the Doctor's mum, like you could have put Susan there, for example. I think there's so many options where she
Or
could have
if
been
it'd been
there
like the moment in the Day of the Doctor had been Carol Ann Ford.
instead of Billie Piper,
Yeah.
because
Or
she
if
was
she,
just
or she changed halfway, kind of keeps changing through all the companions, or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, I don't know.
That would have been cool.
I want to see that version now. Give me that.
Yeah.
Give
That
me
would have
that.
been interesting, but I think the Billie Piper one works as well, because the Day of the Doctor is less of a celebration of classic Who, which obviously it is, but it's more with Tom Baker being in it. But I think it's more of a celebration of new Who as well. And I think a lot of viewers there, I'm thinking of this from a marketing standpoint, a lot of viewers would have recognized probably
But it's also
Billie
the
more than.
It's also the 50th anniversary, though, isn't it?
Well,
So
they've
it's
got
like,
the 60th.
You can get. Well, I don't think we're going to get anything for the 60th. But anyway, I like that idea though, that the moment is switching between all the
Switching, yes.
companions.
You wouldn't even
Then-
have to know who the companions. Like you wouldn't have to know Carol Ann Ford is an old companion. Like the general audience wouldn't need to know that. But for fans, it'd be quite nice. So if you had Ian at Coal Hill, that would have been nice. I mean, there's loads of things he could have done there.
But yeah, I mean, generally, while we're talking about the companions, George, like, what do you think of these companions then?
Well, they're better than whatever we've got now. I'd say the difference is between there's a huge similarity, but there's a key similarity between these guys and the current companions, and that is there's a lot of them. That's a big similarity, but the difference is each one of these classic companions, I feel, does something unique and has a unique personality, and they all have a purpose in themselves rather than simply being an accessory to the Doctor. And we see that by them being capable by themselves in those 2 episodes where the Doctor's not there. But we also see them with the Doctor and they complement him rather than simply being, I'm with the Doctor, I do whatever
I'm told
they say, and I'm going to go do it. It's interesting. And it kind of shows you that often I thought the amount of companions was a problem with why the new companions don't work. But looking back to this, it's more to do with how those companions are written. The amount, I think there probably should still be less, but how they're written, seeing the classic version kind of, it shows me that that's the problem, really, that they don't do anything other than just sit there.
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah. I will do that, Doctor.
I was really impressed with Barbara in this story because, like, I mean, I like Barbara. I like the original 3 companions. They're not really like one of my favorite companions, but I do really like these. Really like these 3. But I've always thought with Barbara sometimes that's because she's kind of like Ian's the actiony one, and Susan's the one that gets into trouble and we need to go rescue. Then Barbara's kind of just the matriarch, and she's always kind of there, with a cloth to help Susan when she always trips over every 2 minutes. Oh, I'll help your ankle, Susan. I've always thought that's Barbara's kind of role. So in Barbara was it in part 2, I think, when she's the one who sees, the city for what it actually is. She's the one who's like, why is nobody doing about this? Then she goes and smashes all those disgusting brain things.
Which is a hilarious scene, which made my dad come running into the room. Just the scream. That voice actor did not get paid enough for that. Just the screaming and the smashing of the brain things and how loud it was. My God.
I turned the TV down because it was so loud.
I know. My dad came into the room and he was like, what is going on? I was like, it's just classic Uchi, just smashing some brains.
Yeah. But I like that because, like, I think, I remember we talked about this when we did the podcast that we did, me and you, Pete. We're talking about David Bradley when he was in Doctor Who. As much as I like, when he's been like an exaggerated first Doctor, a lot of the kind of sexist things that he does aren't really that accurate, and it's more.
Well, this is it because me and Ben are up to 50 odd episodes now. We're into Dark Invasion, so about 50 episodes or something, and we haven't really seen any sexism at all in any of them. The only bit that I could, if someone pulled up, I could kind of go, yeah, I kind of agree, is in Edge of Destruction when the Doctor and Ian hide from Barbara and Susan about the ship about to explode. And a little bit, but even that, I think, well, it's just to protect them. They're not doing it because it's I don't know.
But I think it's something that, like, I've always said that when they do that in Twice Upon a Time, it's more about the era of the show. And there are some examples later on that maybe you can see them. But like you said, you've not seen any of them so far. But I think, like, when you see Barbara's here, like, kind of in part 2, especially, is the strong one. and she's the one leading the team, and then she's the one who destroys those monsters. It's like, this is 1964, and already we've got a strong female character. Like, that's not, I do like that David Bradley version, but like, it's not accurate. It is like,
it is very interesting seeing like Hartnell, like actual Hartnell, after having seen David Bradley's version first. And I can see, like, they're definitely, I can see why, like, I can see they're the same character in the universe. You get what I'm saying? But a lot of the way David Bradley acted, especially in those kind of moments, I didn't feel as warm as when I saw Hartnell act. And it's just interesting seeing David Bradley did a great interpretation, a great homage to Hartnell, but I don't think he can really beat Hartnell as Hartnell,
I think he plays Hartnell really well in Adventure in Space and Time, but his Doctor's slightly screwed. I think that's generally how I kind
He's
of
quite
feel.
stilted as well, though, isn't he? Like, he does quite a, let's get back to the TARDIS. And it's like Hartnell had more of a charm about him and more of a, I don't know, more of a twinkle, I guess.
Speech.
Yeah, it is.
It's like his ship, yeah.
It's a bit like he's playing. It's like a bit like he's
Cyberman.
playing a bit more like later Hartnell. I think he's kind of playing when he does kind of forget his lines and he's not really using any. Like in 10th Planet when they just stick him in a jail cell for a bit because they go, you're too unwell to act, so just sit there for a bit.
Yeah, isn't it interesting though, as well that he has 2 weeks off in Keys of Marinus? Because I mean, like George, I don't know if you were expecting. I don't know if Aidan had told you or anybody had told you, but like, it's interesting because like you just can't imagine it nowadays necessarily, and they all have a break around this time. The Doctor's off in this one, and Susan's off in the Aztecs, and they all have a kind of 2 week holiday around this time.
Barbara was missing in the Sensorites, I noticed when I watched that the other day.
And Ian and the Reign of Terror, so they all get a little bit of a break. But it's interesting because I do think that when the Doctor comes back, he does have a lot more energy and he's a lot more kind of with it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was a break that he needed.
It was a bit kind of jarring seeing the Doctor disappear because it was like, okay, he's going. He'll be in the next episode. Like they'll do. I was assuming they do it like they do with modern stuff. You'd have one story parallel to the other story, but no, the Doctor's just gone doing his own thing. You'll see him later, but you're not seeing him now. I didn't expect that, and it was like a little bit like, oh, where's he gone? But it didn't take away from it because I still what that meant is I was able to get used to the companions and kind of learn why they're the companions because they proved themselves, showing me why they deserve to travel with the Doctor because they're capable and they help him, that, and it was just, and that was nice to see. Yes, I'd like to have seen more Hartnell, but what I saw of Hartnell showed me why he's a great first Doctor, or at least a bit, like he showed me like I'm the first Doctor, and I'm like I can see that kind of thing, yes, it was jarring, but it wasn't detrimental.
Yeah, and I think
it's more of an ensemble, isn't it, as well at this point?
And I think it's also like to say, is this a good like season 1 jumping on point? I think that it kind of proves it is because you do get to know all the characters individually and they all get their own highlights in a different location. It's kind of like, well, here's your introduction to the Doctor now. Now let's move on to Barbara. Now let's do Ian. Now let's do Susan. And I think that's a really nice way of doing it because you are introducing one at a time rather than maybe just a story when you're all just throwing in. Here they all are. They're all jumbled up. They'll all do something at some point. Here you do kind of get a highlight for them all. And I do think that's I do think this is a good introduction. I think this is a really good choice that you chose, Pete.
I do agree with Aidan there, Pete. I do think it's a good choice for the introduction. And the only reason it hasn't dragged me into the world of Classic Who is just because of it's an effort. And it's just like I've explained why, but it was the best, I think, I think it was the best choice to try and jump me on. And it's shown me why Classic Who is good, and it's done that. It hasn't hooked me, but that's not because of the episode choice. I think that's just because Classic Who is Classic Who, and it's kind of daunting to get involved in. Yeah. And I have New Who, which I thoroughly adore. So it's kind of like I have to commit to watching this kind of prototype version of something I really like when I could just watch the one I really liked. That's kind of where it is.
It's
I
like,
completely understand it.
You fall into a bit of a trap as well, though, don't you? Sometimes, I guess, like, I'll most times go for an Eccleston or a Hartnell rather than something that I wouldn't normally pick, like a McCoy or a Jodie one. I think as a fan, you kind of choose the ones that you in your comfort zone more, don't you? That's what you do with the new series, George. Is
Yeah.
you'd much rather put on that one about the forest in Trafalgar Square than than a Hartnell episode.
Well,
I'm not sure if I would personally.
no, but I would probably I'd rather watch a David episode over a classic episode, but I'd also maybe prefer a Capaldi episode over a classic episode. But would I prefer a classic over a Jodie episode? Probably. It's all, I prefer a classic over a Jodie.
I know you meant I was going to Jodie. That's what I was doing now. I don't want. Yeah. So I think it's a really good. I think it was a really good choice. This was because, like, even like you said, there without a comfort zone. Like I'm saying at the moment, I'm watching Tom Baker's era from start to finish, and then I might go into a bit of Davison as well. And I'm thinking, part of me is like going, do I do Colin Baker and McCoy as well? And my brain's going, absolutely not. You don't really like those Doctors, do you? But I'm thinking, well, why not? Give them another go. But I think that is just kind of the problem, and I think I've still not seen all of Classic Who, and I've been a Doctor Who fan for how long now? Like years and years. And it's just because I kind of just cherry pick the ones that I think look it most. I look at a DVD cover and go, that looks interesting. Let's watch that one. And that one doesn't look so interesting. I won't watch that one yet. That's basically how I watch them. So this is the first time I've seen them in order. But overall, I do think this was a really good and a fun episode. I really enjoyed it. And when I was 2 parts in, I was going, this is really good. This is like, it's nonsensical, but that's kind of like why I like it. It's just fun. And the Vord, I'm now really looking forward to getting figures of, because now I've seen them in context. I enjoy them. So
have you ever heard that Big Finish story that they're in? Domain of the
No,
Vord?
I know it's reduced at the moment because they've gone, let's push this while the figures are out. But I might be more inclined to listen to it now.
It's quite a good one. From what I've only heard it once, but I remember enjoying it. Give that a shot. I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed rewatching it, and it's what I think as well works in this episode's favor more than a lot of Classic Who stories actually is the supporting cast. There's a great you've got Altos and Sabitha as kind of filling in for when the Doctor's not there.
Roman looking dude. I really liked him actually. He was there was just something about him. He had this air of like a real personality, really, and just of a different time. And I do like that in Doctor Who when they kind of get this person from a completely different setting, not from Earth, modern day, and you get to see what they're like with the Doctor and the companions and doing kind of that kind of stuff. And I don't know, I really liked him. His outfit was a bit ludicrous when going out in the cold. I'm like, I'll wear this fur coat, but I need all of my legs showing because otherwise I won't look my best, which was something. But I did really like him actually. He was cool.
Yeah, and also wasn't the killer in part 5 and 6 called Aidan as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Killer Aidan. Let's go. What have I done? What have I done?
Yeah. Cool.
So overall, do you think you can give it an out of 10 rating, George, or do you think maybe it's
for this
left field for you to do that?
I think it's too soon for me to give it a definitive rating of like this is what I think of Classic Who, and with every kind of context
just the Keys of Marinus generally.
But for this, yes, but for this kind of this episode on its own as a jumping in point and all that, blah, blah, blah. This may sound low, but I don't often rate things high. But kind of a 6, maybe a 7, kind of a 6, 7 out of 10. That's where I'm sitting.
I think in a 7. I'm thinking a 7 for me. See what seems comfortable. Like it's really fun. I really enjoy this. I'm over a lot of Hartnell episodes. I kind of really enjoy the fun Hartnell episodes. Like I really like Planet of Giants. Obviously, this means nothing to George, but for Peter, I really enjoy Planet of Giants, and I know it's kind of just they go really small and they get stuck in a sink. I know that's basically the plot, but I really enjoy that. So for Keys of Marinus just to be fun and wholesome as well, I just really enjoyed it, and I can see myself revisiting this one sooner than maybe the Daleks, because that is just like
But it's interesting you say that about Planet of Giants as well though, because my brother gave the last part of that 8 out of 10 when we were doing our ratings, and I was like 8 out of 10 for Planet of Giants. Like I think sometimes coming at it from a different angle that's not necessarily like a hardcore Classic Who fan can be quite interesting. I think that you don't see all the, and also if you don't know what the reputation of the episode is, like he didn't, you don't have these kind of preconceptions.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, one thing I've been doing with him as well is like, obviously, we're watching Dalek Invasion of Earth at the moment, and I hid the DVD case from him. I hid the menus. I just pressed play, and he didn't know the Daleks were in it until the cliffhanger. So it's quite nice I'm getting these reactions from him. Oh, it's the Daleks. But yeah, so definitely, George, give more Classic Who a watch if it interests you.
Or just when I have forced him to.
Hide him up, yeah.
Yeah, in the basement. Watch.
You
will watch Doctor Who.
Aidan, you can get some good rope from B&Q. It's the strongest I've found. Just use that.
B and Q.
Right, okay,
noted.
I'll get a knife from B&Q as well. Both go shopping at the same time. George, what's the knife for? It's for the rope you've got there. Okay, cool.
Oh. But no. Great episode.
Yeah.
To pick. Far
Thank
better
you.
than the Daleks. It's a shame we couldn't watch Reign of Terror. I've got the DVD, but obviously we're limited to what's on BritBox for.
Have you watched Reign of Terror, by the way, Aidan?
No, it's another one I've not seen. There are gaps in my classic Doctor Who watching. I've seen most of it, but there are gaps. So no, I'll probably watch that one as well, just to break up my Baker run through, because it's got.
Where are you up to with the Tom Baker ones? Did you say near the
I've
end?
just done Horns of Nyman.
Okay.
So can you understand why I'm like, like it's like I know Sharda's next on BritBox. It isn't technically an episode, but
Is that the animated one?
Yeah, I've seen that before and I really enjoyed that. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
looking
like
forward to I look forward to watching that again. And then I suppose season 18 mixes things up again because it's all, new showrun and everything. But I just want it done. I just want it done.
You can do the Davison ones after that.
I think I'm gonna do a few Davisons.
Yeah.
At least to get more of an appreciation for Turlo, because I don't really know much about Turlo, and I know he's on a lot of the Big Finishers. So I feel like if I'm listening to Big Finish, I'm going, who is this guy? I feel like that doesn't really make any sense. So I watched some of them, but yeah. Thank you for joining us, Pete.
No worries.
As we bring this to a close.
It's been fun. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah, if this gets enough views, we'll see.
Oh, thank you.
No, well, thank you for joining us, Pete. It's been.
Well, there was just a silence.
Nice.
We should do this again sometime. Silence.
Well,
Okay.
the reason I was thinking because we could get you on a series 2 one. Then I thought, would you want to do another classic one, or could we get on you on an Eccleston? So what was
Adventure in Space and Time?
What was it? That's a good shout.
Yeah.
But I was actually my brain was processing there. So it wasn't like I was thinking what
Making
episode could we get you on?
Hey, no, Aidan, we know what you were thinking.
Yeah. No, I was thinking what I thought. Where could we assign you? That's what I was thinking. But Adventure in Space and Time is a good idea.
Yeah, but what are we doing next week, Aidan?
Episode wise, I won't reveal the guest, of course, but episode wise,
course.
we're an Impossible Planet
Ooh.
/ Satan Pit. So we're
Yes.
going back
With the
for
ball
Tennant,
rock.
back to Tennant. So yeah, join us then. Thank you for listening.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I think it's really cool what you guys have got going here. I don't have time to listen to all of the podcasts, but the
That's
ones I
fair
do-
enough. No one does.
That's fair enough. That's 21 hours worth. I don't blame you.
The ones I have listened to, I think it's really cool what you've got going here. I think it's nice that you've got. And it's nice to have a mate that likes Doctor Who as well, because I know that I haven't got that many mates really that like Doctor. I'm not certainly not ones that do podcasts with me. So
Yes.
it's nice that you both doing this journey together, and it's good stuff. So keep it up.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Yes. And
Pleasure to be a part of it for 1 hour.
yes, thank you.
Yes.
It was nice to have you on, and
Yes.
it was a good episode.
So
Well, the podcast was a good episode, or the Keys of Marinus was a good episode.
both.
Both. Yeah.
It's all good episodes this week. So yes, join us next week, and goodbye.
Bye bye.